Have you ever wanted to visit the amazing amusement parks of the USA? Where to start is the question, and it can be overwhelming. America really is huge and there's no way you could do everything in one trip. This is Stu for Out and Back Travel. Today I'm going to help you on where to start planning that USA roller coaster road trip. This process is a bit like a funnel. We're going to start at the top and slowly narrow it down until we have a plan at the end. First up, we're going to get some inspiration to create a bucket list or a wish list to help guide us. Then there's a little light homework to help get that background information. We're going to focus in on a particular area of the country. We're going to think about driving times as we don't want to burn ourselves out. We're going to look how to put all this together to form an itinerary. Then we're going to consider whether to do a loop trip or a one-way trip. First up then, inspiration. Starting at the top of that funnel, I'd recommend some general research just to get some ideas on what roller coasters or parks are on your bucket list. Are there particular cities or regions of America that you'd like to travel through? Do you want to just do amusement parks or do you want to do some cultural attractions too? To get some inspiration, please watch some vlogs and read trip reports on forums, because these are both great visual ways of getting those ideas for your wish list, and it may give some ideas of direction you'd like to head in. Next up is some light reading, and it's just a little light reading, I promise. We need to start to do a little bit of homework to practically make the road trip work. I've got two websites which are great for research. Of course, the enthusiast bible that is Roller Coaster Database. You can use the parks nearby option on the park homepage to show you the neighbouring parks and how far they are away. And then there's Coast to Coaster. Some absolute saints have taken the time to overlay every roller coaster and alpenslide onto a Google map, so you can easily navigate your way around the world and see what roller coasters are in various areas. It links back to the Roller Coaster Database page for that park, so you can get the website and find out more information on the creds. Then open a little extra tab in Google Maps and see the directions between the 2 points to try to get an estimate of how long it would take to drive between the two parks that you've chosen. As part of the research phase, you'll need to check the park operating calendar and hours, as the seasons may be slightly different to what you're used to at home. There's no point in starting to plan a trip in a region that won't be open at the time of year when you plan to visit. Let's now start to focus in on an area. By now you should have a wish list of parks you'd like to visit, practically the distances between them, and you've made sure the parks are actually going to be open when you're visiting. This should help you to focus in on a particular region of America. For example, if Coney Island Cyclone, King Dakar, Topful Dragster and X2 make your bucket list, it's best to plan a route around the three that are close together and save X2 for a future trip. While you could drive from New York to California, it is over 3,000 miles, so you spend an awful lot of your vacation time sat in the car driving past so many great things to see and do along the way, and it really is about maximising your holiday to get the most bang for your buck. And that brings us to think about driving times. Use a route planning tool to accurately calculate the driving times between 2 points, and always allow a little extra time for traffic, refuelling and rest breaks. I suggest that you want to try and aim for driving times of up to 3 to 4 hours. Try to put the driving times into context with drives that you can relate to back home. For example, it takes around 3 hours to drive between Alton Towers and Fort Park. Now, can you imagine making that drive every day of a 2-week holiday? Because that's what you're getting yourself into. If you're travelling on the East Coast and wanted to hit up Six Flags Great Adventure and Busch Gardens Williamsburg, it will take 5 hours to get between the parks, plus you're passing through 3 major cities, so you need to add extra time for traffic. To break up the journey, use Coast to Coaster or Roller Coaster Database to see what's in the area. Adding in King's Dominion would shorten the driving time by an hour and gets you the Intamin Giga Coaster Intimidator 305. There's also Six Flags America located in Washington DC, and this would literally split the journey time in half. While it has a couple of good coasters, if you're on a limited time budget it may be better to spend your time at other parks, and this is really where it comes down to your own likes, preferences and priorities. Some long driving stretches are unavoidable. For example, to get between Busch Gardens Williamsburg and Carowinds it's over 250 miles and will take 5.5 hours, with no major parks to really break up that journey. This can help determine which is the preferred direction to plan your route in. For example, if you were travelling from the Carowinds area and left around 8 AM, you could then be at Busch Gardens for 1 or 2 in the afternoon, which gives you an extra afternoon at this amazing park that does need a little extra time to explore, so you're making the most effective use of your available time in your vacation. Let's take a look at itineraries. We've got the parks, we know how far they are apart, we can now start to put the itinerary together, and this will give us a framework to get a road trip that will fit within your holiday time. Using a spreadsheet, start to list the parks and pop the driving times in a separate column next to it. Based on your available holiday time or particular dates you have available to travel, for example, do you have 1 week, 10 days, 2 weeks, etc. I like to use a spreadsheet as I can type over things as the plans start to come together. However, if you're not as geeky as myself, feel free to simply write the list down on some paper. I always say this at the end of every video, but you really have to make sure you can get out and come back again. You don't want to be at Cedar Point the last night of your holiday and have a flight home from New York the next day. This is why Google Maps is great for putting together a route plan, however it will only allow up to 10 stops. MapQuest is a good website as it allows unlimited stops and it even works out an estimate of the fuel costs and suggests a more practical order to put your stops into. However, it does require a little patience. Personally, I prefer to use Google Maps at the initial planning phase, and then as I start to finalise things I'd switch to MapQuest. The next decision is to do a loop trip or a one-way trip. The cheapest way to do the road trip is to plan a route that forms a circle or a loop so you start and end at the same airport. If you are trying to cover more ground or want to reduce some of the driving, it is possible to do a one-way trip where you arrive in at one airport but leave from another. Look out for the multi-city option when searching for flights online. And also, I'd like to return the car to a different location on car rental searches. This is going to be more expensive on 2 accounts. The flights will generally be more, and also the car hire will charge you an extra fee for dropping the car at a different location. Please check the small print, as some companies will charge you an additional local fee in addition to the more expensive rate. This can really work for some trips though. For example, if you're trying to get the parks in the middle of America, the more accessible international airports are really located at the top and bottom of the route. Therefore, there aren't really any in the centre. So you'd be looking at starting in Texas and travelling up to Chicago or vice versa. The downside is the flights in car will be a bit more expensive. The upside is you haven't spent a whole day or more trying to travel back to the starting point at the end of your vacation. So that's our practical guide on where to start when putting a USA roller coaster road trip together. Before you do, if you haven't already, please check out my video on survival tips for USA road trips, which I'll link at the end. Are you planning a USA road trip in the future? What advice or tips would you like to see next? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, stay safe on the way out and back.